Sorcerer is the master of magic, the person from your party who has studied the mystical arts for years and mastered the elements in all of their forms. This vocation in Dragon's Dogma 2 is capable of summoning tornadoes, calling down meteors, blasting enemies with ice, and burning everything to a crisp. If you want to take on monsters with over-the-top power moves, then this is the class for you. Let's take a look at Sorcerer's bombastic skills and see which are the best. Decanter is a life leech ability designed to give sorcerers some way to heal in combat. Most often a mage is going to take this place and make Decanter redundant, but it is an option that definitely does lifesteal a good amount of health back to you. Upon cast, you're going to begin siphoning the life force of one targeted enemy. The damage dealt is incredibly low and does not deal enough stagger to stop that enemy from continuing their attack on you. You're forced to stand completely still during the animation, and while it does look quick to cast, they gave it an odd animation after the full charge that takes quite some time. Basically, it's a really bad skill you should probably avoid using. Healing is healing, so it's not unusable, but you're only going to need it when playing solo, and even then, it's really going to be hard to not take damage. Seems kind of similar to Life-Taking Arrow from Magic Archer, but that one is miles better. Flagration is a flamethrower spell. You very quickly charge up a fire blast that can be held down for several seconds. Considering it is one of the earlier spells you have, it actually gets a lot of use before moving on to other options. Because it has such nice spread, you can use it to prevent enemies from moving in on you. And while the damage is not amazing on large monsters, you can deal with any lesser target nicely. Flagration is extremely reliable. The range is close to medium and you can't turn all that fast while flaming up, but it does the job well. Especially if you're running some other spells that have really long casting times, this is a great option. Now, Mage also gets this skill, and there is a better fire spell for the Sorcerer class. Meaning you probably won't use it after a few level ups, but never bad, and who doesn't enjoy a good flamethrower ability, which actually looks very much like a flamethrower going off. Spellhold is the utility option for the Sorcerer that is either extremely powerful or extremely worthless. Once you charge up any of your other spells, you can use Spellhold to save that cast onto your staff. The colorful aura surrounds it, letting you know the skill is there and ready to be used. Once you activate Spellhold again, it instantly casts that other spell that was stored. Right off the bat, you might think, oh, that's pretty amazing for Maelstrom and Meteoron, which have very high cast times. And you'd be right. Out of battle, you could prep a very strong attack to go off as soon as that fight starts, which might then let you get another powerful cast off right after, while the first is still doing its job. The strategy is incredible in situations where you know you need the upper hand, but honestly, I never really use it. Spellhold does increase stamina cost by a decent bit, which doesn't matter much, but can be a problem at times. I generally just cast my spells when I need them, have correct pawns set up, mainly a single fighter, and nothing really attacks you that aggressively anyway. If you had more spell slots, this would be a must take, but with only 4 options, I'd rather have 1 extra spell dealing damage. Neat idea though, as you can one-shot larger monsters instantly with a prepped Meteoron ready to go off at any time. Haggle is a large whirlwind of ice, or more accurately, frost. It summons this cold area in a massive dome, dealing damage repeatedly for its duration. The best application for Haggle is freezing enemies quickly, as it can freeze entire groups in only a few seconds. The damage itself is amazing when enemies are weak to cold, but otherwise it's just okay. A huge advantage here is very large area. Set it off and you can attack many enemies that might not even be all that close to each other, or use it to attack monsters while they struggle to not sit inside. I tested this on a dragon thinking, hey, if this is gonna get results, it'll be there. And honestly, it was pretty good. The ice would attack the heart and knock him out of the air in a timely fashion, but it also wasn't that crazy good either. Took quite some time to take down the beast, and depending on where you cast the damage, it's kind of inconsistent. Seems the upper half is what deals the damage, so casting on a dragon's head actually loses you a bunch of power. Never a bad spell to have for stacking Augur or Flare or adding to the extra damage in a long fight. I do believe, however, that Frigor is much more powerful and easier to make use of. Cesium is the earthquake spell. You slam your staff onto the ground and several eruptions of stone are unleashed out of the ground. What's cool is these stones actually travel upward and can even hit flying enemies due to their nice height. And the stagger potential is massive here, managing to knock a dragon several times over. Very nice for big monsters who are knocked, as it will hit them easily and rarely miss. However, for such an ultimate skill, it has far too many downsides. Number 1 being that it doesn't actually deal magic damage, and Instead, it is strength, which is obviously going to scale poorly when you're playing a pure sorcerer character. Most players would choose to use elven blacksmithing for this class since it grants the most magic, but that doesn't really get Cesium going well. Then you also might think, well, it's an earthquake, so it's going to be amazing for crowds. No, actually it's a single target skill. The pillars are very accurate and only hit what is directly above them. So a pack of goblins can easily remain unharmed after 2 separate casts in a row. Plus, it's the longest spell to cast that can be quickened, which often leads to you running out of stamina entirely if you're using the skill often enough, unfortunately. On its own, the skill can deal very good damage. It performs well against most enemies, but you'll never really use it too much due to other options being far more consistent and honestly more powerful too. Salamander is an incredible fire spell that can cover a wide area. With a bit of a longer charge time, you throw out fire that burns on the ground. The initial attack deals damage, and then everything inside those flames takes considerable burn damage over time. The range at which this attack can hit is very large, making it an excellent option in a lot of scenarios. Any group of enemies is cooked to death as they run towards you, and all large monsters weak to fire are obliterated in the blink of an eye. It's a bit unimpressive against dragons, and Cyclopses have their weak spots a bit out of harm's way. The main downside is that Salamander only attacks on the ground. Yes, burning everything in front of you, but not able to really hit flying targets well or reach those vitals that are so important to hit. Against the right targets, there's no better option, say a Minotaur, and you could stay safe while casting far away, since you deal better damage at the end of your flames anyway. Not a necessary spell by any means, but it is really fun to set this much stuff on fire, and the audio given off by such an attack feels blazing in nature, which gives you a good power feeling. Levin is a lightning attack from the sky. It has a relatively quick cast time and calls down several bolts of lightning in a row. Additionally, if you continue pressing the input, you can cast one bolt over and over until your stamina is drained. The initial strikes deal incredible damage, and you can deal with harpies very nicely with this. In fact, most harpies feel completely trivialized if you have Levin on you at the time. For large monsters, the lightning can hit vitals as well, making it one of the more well-rounded skills. The one holdup here is that continuing to press the input for additional strikes is actually very poor for damage. You're going to use this to finish off an enemy that didn't quite get taken out the first go, but has a little bit more health. When you use the spam on monsters, it feels like a complete waste of time. Instead, just recast and get those several strikes off once again. The strike's AoE upon landing can hit groups quickly, and while it isn't a super powerhouse, Levin is incredibly reliable for you, to the point where it feels hard to run without. Walking on and targeting enemies with extreme accuracy has many advantages when you're the non-tank member of the party. Rigor is the Ice Blast spell. Honestly, this should have just been Giselle from the first game since Mage already has this ability, but at the same time, it's a top-notch attack. You charge a very quick Ice Blast that is sent out in front of you, creating a small structure to stand on and granting massive stagger power. Against a dragon, you can keep him from doing almost anything as the ice hits their hearts every time and knocks them out of casting or roars. Frigor also has a good chance to hit vitals since the spike goes way up into the air, and there's something to be said about this chunky thud when that ice hits a group. While not being the best option for flying foes, it can work, making it have practically no downside. I even noticed that most of the time it does more damage than almost all the other spells. Frigor stops any advance. It can let you run other spells which take longer to cast, because it's an ace up your sleeve. Plus, I'm a bit biased because I prefer ice magic to most options in RPGs, so this is right up my alley. Thundermine is the one and only must-have spell for Sorcerer. I mean, you might as well just not play Sorcerer if you're not going to use this ability. Summon up a small crackling orb with this quick cast. It's going to then rest in that location, zapping enemies who come near it. The lightning damage is not high at all, and actually terrible when used on large monsters. But it also keeps anything from coming to that location for some time. Enemies always get stunned or tossed back when it jolts them, which allows you to get other magic casts off with no danger at all. Harpies actually fall on the ground, dog groups get fumbled away, and Saurians roll towards you only to be sent flying. The orb lasts a decent amount of time, usually getting a certain number of hits off before it disappears. So pop one of these up to clear out the area, then pop another for some defense. And now you're free for a good amount of time to use whatever spell you want. Using Thundermine can greatly increase your team's power as fighters, warriors, and thieves can get open attacks on enemies that you jolt down. For the volcanic island, where you will see many enemies at one time, Thundermine makes them all seem harmless. No, it does not have a lot of power, but for its utility, Thundermine is unmatched and almost required for playing Sorcerer at all. Maelstrom, of course, is the tornado you can summon after learning this master skill. It has a very long casting time that cannot be quickened, forcing you to either use spell hold before battle or get to a safe distance where pawns can protect you. And the power behind Maelstrom is its reliability. Whenever summoned on an enemy, that enemy is going to die. If it's a large monster, they will be preoccupied for some time and take substantial damage. Cyclopses are odd when it comes to this, as the thing seems to target their eye almost entirely, defeating them faster than anything I've seen. Dragons are nice as well, since it can deal amazing damage to them even while they're flying in the air. And when large groups come out to play, you can summon this and send all of them away. The more enemies in one spot, the more fun this is to watch. And yeah, that thing works in caves, can be amazing for golems, and is awesome summoning such power. Now, I will mention that there was something about the visual in the first game that made it a bit better. The thing had this twisting funnel to it, where now you just have a mass of wind, and the sucking power is not all that strong unless the target's directly under that spot. But overall, it turns tough fights into, well, not tough fights anymore, making it an option you will almost always have on you. Meteoron is one of the strongest attacks in DD2. Sadly, according to my own ranking criteria usually, Meteoron should be below Maelstrom. It has a long casting time, will come from where you're looking, often hitting mountains, doesn't work in caves, and manages to fry your loot on kills, technically making it less reliable and worse than Maelstrom. But it's literally meteors from the sky, and I cannot get over that. The sheer fun factor of landing these giant fire rocks onto a dragon, dealing ridiculous damage to his health, is beyond amazing. The screen starts shaking, you lose sight of everything in the explosions, and everything dies. The meteors themselves are very accurate, much more so than they were in the first game. As for large monsters, they almost always get hit. Obviously, the damage is a bit better depending on where it lands, but the AoE usually makes this hit vitals pretty well. Also, just look at this summoning animation, man. Fireballs are sent forth from your levitating body into the heavens to call down death upon the enemy. Meteoron really does do some of the highest damage in the game, potentially, and once you learn how to aim it a bit better, it becomes a lot more fun to just run around with. Finally, we have Augural Flare, which is the best sorcerer skill in Dragon's Dogma 2. This is a relatively simple skill that can push you way past your limit in the early game and completely break the late game when used correctly. After a quick charge time, you place a bluish ball of magic onto an enemy. If you do nothing, that ball will go away, dealing no damage. However, if you manage to attack that flare with ranged attacks or melee attacks, it's going to stack up these clusters. The more clusters stacked, the more explosions go off when it gets fully charged. Once it begins to change colors a bit, the clusters explode, dealing incredible damage. Your basic mage attack is ranged and pretty decent at targeting the blue area. Not always perfect depending on your placement, but if you have it on a vital, it will be reliable enough. You can also use tactics like summoning haggle or flagration skills on that area, letting it rack up faster. Melee pawns can run up and get the clusters to build up as well, although that's more random than you would probably like. The best strat, of course, is going to be use this on Warfarer, using Scarlet Kiss from daggers to ignite the flare. But sorcerers are going to have to stick to the old auto aim most of the time. All you need to do is get this in the right spot and hammer away. It might not always kill in one hit, but the constant explosions open up better attacks, and usually stagger very well. It's actually kind of a cheat code for the game, as early on you get more power than you should. Plopping this on a dragon's head lets you beat them with bad equipment and low stats. And it's a more engaging kind of magic that lets you make it fun seeing how many clusters you can stack up each time. Pretty basic idea that can outshine the master skills, which is kind of crazy to think about. And there you have all these sorcerer skills ranked in Dragon's Dogma 2. Almost all of these are very fun to use, as over-the-top magic looks cool and decimates your enemies. My only complaint is I don't know why 4 of these spells are also tied to mage. They could easily have been different options, since there were way more spells to bring over from even the first game, meaning sorcerer only has 8 unique skills, which feels a bit low. However, all these options are very strong and usually fun to bring along regardless. Plus, sorcerer's ability to quicken their stamina regen at any time is an awesome mechanic that makes the spell-based combat much more engaging for the player. At the end of the day, big AoE coming in different flavors will always be fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.